I'm Fred Wertheimer, President of Democracy 21. I'll open this. I will be followed by remarks by my colleagues who are here, and then we'll open it for questions. The Federal Election Commission is itself a national campaign finance scandal. It's widely recognized that the FEC is a dysfunctional agency that consistently refuses to enforce the campaign finance laws that have been enacted to prevent government corruption. Reform groups are sending a letter to President Obama today calling on him to do his part to end the FEC scandal by nominating new FEC commissioners to serve on the agency. Currently, 5 of the 6 FEC commissioners are lame ducks. Their terms have expired. They can't be reappointed, but they can sit until new commissioners have been nominated and confirmed. With the exception of one unsuccessful attempt in 2009, however, President Obama has been unwilling to nominate new FEC commissioners. As long as President Obama fails to send FEC nominations to the Senate, the FEC national scandal is President Obama's responsibility. At the heart of the current problems at the FEC are 3 Republican commissioners who are ideologically opposed to the campaign finance laws and who consistently block the FEC professional staff from pursuing investigations and enforcing the law. It takes the vote of 4 commissioners to take any action by the FEC. These charts, which most of you can't see, set forth answers that then candidate Obama provided when asked about the FEC by the Midwest Democracy Alliance. I'll read the answers to you. I believe that the FEC needs to be strengthened and that individuals named to the commission should have a demonstrated record of fair administration of the law and an ability to overcome partisan biases. My initial goal as president will be to determine whether we can make the FEC more effective through appointments. What the FEC needs most is strong, impartial leadership that will promote integrity in our elections. The president further said, as president, I will appoint nominees to the commission who are committed to enforcing the nation's election laws. For almost 3 years now, President Obama has failed to meet his public commitment. He must now do his part to solve the FEC scandal by sending FEC nominees to the Senate. If some senators want to block the confirmation, this is a battle that needs to be fought out in the Senate. This is no excuse for President Obama to continue to fail to act. Individual senators should have to take responsibility for either helping to solve or perpetuating the FEC national scandal and the failure to enforce our campaign finance laws. President Obama can no longer sit on the sidelines as the FEC national scandal continues to unfold and grow. Democracy 21 and my colleagues call on President Obama to act now to protect the integrity of the nation's campaign finance laws by nominating new FEC commissioners to replace the 5 lame duck commissioners sitting on the FEC.
Good morning. My name is Lloyd Leonard, and I'm the Director of Advocacy for the League of Women Voters of the United States. The League of Women Voters has been working for fair and open elections for many decades. We've supported campaign finance reforms at the national level and in the states in order to protect our democracy from corruption and to ensure that the voices of regular voters can be heard. This year, we see incredible dangers ahead. Special interests are spending huge sums of money to influence the upcoming elections and to influence the public officials that will be chosen in those elections. This special interest spending promises to be of historic proportions, and they are not spending this money out of the goodness of their hearts. Campaign spending is an investment for special interests and their lobbyists, and they will expect a return on that investment. We face this situation because the Supreme Court has turned the special interests loose, and because the FEC is not enforcing the laws that we do have. Any legal system depends on enforcement. When the police are absent or asleep, then the law will be broken all the time, and those who break the law will go unpunished. When it comes to enforcing campaign finance laws, the FEC is definitely asleep, or worse. There is no cop on the beat to protect the public interest. 5 of the 6 FEC commissioners are serving expired terms, and each of them is legally barred from being reappointed. This system is clearly broken, and it's the President's responsibility to begin the process of fixing it. It is time for the President to step up to the challenge, just as he promised he would in his campaign 4 years ago. As Fred said in November 2007, the President said, "As President, I will appoint nominees to the Commission who are committed to enforcing our nation's elections laws." We are waiting, Mr. President. We are waiting. It is also time for Congress to provide effective oversight on the current FEC. The League is troubled that the hearing today in the Committee on House Administration does not include any opportunity for concerned citizens or concerned organizations to speak. We are worried that no one will ask the hard questions about the FEC's failures on the job. We must face the facts. Our campaign finance system is corrupt. Big money special interests threaten to drown out the voices and concerns of ordinary citizens. And big money gets special treatment from our elected officials. Right now, the ball is in the President's court. He needs to make some good nominations to the FEC, either on his own or with the help and assistance of a blue ribbon commission to make recommendations to him. With elections on the way, our democracy can't wait any longer.
Hi, I'm Craig Holman with Public Citizen. As you know, the purpose of this press conference is because the House Administration Committee is holding a hearing over in 1310 Longworth coming up in about a half an hour about the FEC, in which they've only invited FEC commissioners to testify. So we can expect this to be very much a pro forma hearing. As a result, our groups decided that in order to get more of the real story out about the Federal Election Commission, we need to hold this press conference. Our groups, by the way, I want to summarize them. I mean, Public Citizen, Crew, Democracy 21, Campaign Legal Center, Common Cause, U.S. PERG, League of Women Voters. This is a large coalition that's behind this effort. And much of what I want to talk about is the chart that no one can see down here at the bottom. The Federal Election Commission is broken. And the reason is largely because of Senator Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has fought against every campaign finance law he could in Congress and with the public. And he has not been able to undermine the campaign finance law with Congress or with the public, but he has figured out the way he can do it is by selecting people to the Federal Election Commission who will not enforce the law. And that's what we're stuck with. We're stuck with 3 specific Republican commissioners that have voted as a consistent bloc, led by Don McGahn, causing a historic number of deadlock votes. Once the FEC deadlocks, if those 3 Republicans vote with 1 bloc against the rest of the commission, no action can be taken. And as you can see, literally, historically, throughout the entire history of the FEC, the number of deadlocks has usually been less than 2%. Suddenly, with this new block of Republicans who have been appointed to the commission, it's increased 8-fold. And it's not only deadlocked the commission into not doing actions, but you can see on this chart the actual number of actions that they're taking also are collapsing. If we have an agency that will not enforce the law, that essentially guts the law. And that is what we have been stuck with. By the way, the deadlock voting trends, as the memo that I've handed out, spills across the other primary jurisdictions of the FEC too. The enforcement is the most important aspect, but it also has really caused a lot of deadlocks and lack of action when it comes to audits, regulations, even offering advice. The FEC is the agency that's supposed to advise candidates and committees as to what they can do and how they ought to interpret the law. It was Facebook, I believe, that just recently went to the FEC and asked for an opinion on how they could pay for or how they could offer advertisements on the Facebook page. And because the FEC deadlocked 3-3 on that decision, it leaves Facebook entirely on its own. So we not only have a body, an agency that is supposed to be enforcing the law, not doing so, this agency isn't even capable or willing to offer constructive advice to candidates and campaigns as to how they should behave within the campaign process itself. The FEC is clearly broken.
Good morning. My name is Paul Ryan. I'm the FEC Program Director and Associate Legal Counsel at the Campaign Legal Center. As the most expensive election in this nation's history kicks into high gear, fueled by corporate and union dollars that have been injected into the system by the Supreme Court Citizens United decision, the likelihood of any meaningful campaign finance law enforcement in this election cycle is slim to none. The Supreme Court has made our campaign finance system bad, but the FEC has made it much, much worse, with its failure to enforce what laws remain on the books and its creation of loopholes that undermine the disclosure that even the Supreme Court has approved of. One such loophole, for example, was created by the FEC in 2007. The McCain-Feingold law requires that any group that spends more than $10,000 in a calendar year on a TV or radio ad that clearly identifies a candidate within close proximity to an election, so-called electioneering communications, these groups must disclose under the statute the identity of every person who gave the group $1,000 or more. Period. Every person that gave the group $1,000 or more. But in 2007, the FEC took it upon itself to gut this disclosure requirement by instead requiring corporations and labor organizations to disclose only the identities of those persons who made a donation of $1,000 or more, specifically for the purpose of furthering the electioneering communications made by that corporation or labor organization. It was entirely predictable in 2007 that those wishing to evade disclosure would simply refrain from designating their funds for election ads, and instead they would just give their money for no particular designated person. The FEC had legalized money laundering. Donor disclosure by groups in the 2010 elections, spending tens of millions of dollars on electioneering communications, plummeted. Again, entirely predictable. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, for example, spent more than $30 million on electioneering communications in the 2010 elections and didn't disclose any donors. Similarly, the American Action Network spent more than $20 million on electioneering communication ads in 2010 elections and didn't disclose any donors. This is an issue that we will see in 2012. Both sides of the aisle, Democratic groups, Republican groups, and the FEC now refuses to close this loophole it created in 2007, even though it's become apparently and painfully obvious through the 2010 elections that it's a massive, massive problem in disclosure. This year, the FEC has twice deadlocked on the very simple task of voting to approve a notice of proposed rulemaking to launch a rulemaking to implement the Citizens United decision. This is just the first step in the rulemaking process that invites public comment on what the FEC should consider in this rulemaking proceeding. What's the sticking point? Disclosure. 3 Republican commissioners refused to revisit this gaping loophole they blew in the law back in 2007, while the 3 Democratic commissioners think that it at the very least makes sense to invite public comment about whether or not to address this loophole. Why is the FEC afraid to receive public comment regarding this disclosure loophole? It's probably because it knows the public will overwhelmingly endorse closing the loophole to create meaningful disclosure of donors fueling our election spending in 2012. For this and other reasons outlined in the written testimony that we, Campaign Legal Center, together with Democracy 21 and Fred Wertheimer, are submitting to the committee today, Campaign Legal Center renews its long-standing call for the replacement of the FEC with a new, well-funded, independent campaign finance regulatory and enforcement agency. But at the very least, the President should follow through on his promise to appoint commissioners who will actually do their job and enforce the law.
Good morning. I'm Steve Spalding of Common Cause. I'm a legal associate in the Law and Democracy Project there. The Supreme Court's 5-4 decision almost 2 years ago opened the floodgates to unlimited corporate and union spending in our electoral process. In the most recent 2010 elections, over $3.6 billion in political spending influenced the vote, a historic high for a midterm. Of that sum, over $133 million was funded by groups that never disclosed their donors or the sources of their money. With the 2012 presidential election well underway, super PACs and other so-called independent groups have announced their plans to shatter outside spending records. For example, American Crossroads has already pledged to double its original goals and raise $240 million. A former political operative of President Obama is leading a super PAC that hopes to raise close to $100 million. Distressingly, at precisely the time when a deluge of secret money is inundating our political system, inaction at the Federal Election Commission has resulted in a vacuum around the enforcement and administration of our campaign finance laws. The 2010 midterm elections provided a mere glimpse and the tip of the iceberg of a new and rapidly changing campaign finance regime that is riddled with loopholes and flush with secret cash. Shadow political organizations headed by candidates' well-known political associates are exploiting already weak coordination and disclosure rules. The new system gravely mocks contribution limits and is a carte blanche invitation to corruption and the appearance thereof. This new Wild West style of campaigning, the likes of which Americans haven't seen in decades, undermines the integrity of our government and severely challenges long-standing campaign finance law. The FEC has failed to act in accordance with its mission. 3-3 votes, which, as Craig demonstrates, have increased substantially over the past decade, are paralyzing our democracy. Common Cause joins all of our colleague organizations in calling on the President to name new commissioners who will restore some confidence in the system, provided that the new commissioners are demonstrably committed to the nonpartisan administration of election and campaign finance laws that are already on the books and have been interpreted by the court for decades. Our democracy and its legitimacy demands transparency and accountability. The FEC was set up to guard against the corrosive influence of money in our electoral process, but currently sound policy is being drowned out along with the voices of American citizens. While the fundraising arms race continues unabated in a new era of unlimited secret money, now is precisely the time for a commitment to our campaign finance laws.
Hello, my name is Blair Bowie, and I'm a democracy advocate at US PIRG. And I think that my colleagues have made a very strong case for the fact that the FEC is not functioning at the level that it should be and not doing its job. So what I want to talk about a little more is what are the actual implications of this dysfunction for the upcoming elections and for the American people. We all know the FEC is meant to enforce campaign finance laws, but the bottom line there is that these laws are a fundamental necessity to ensuring that legislators are accountable to the public, their constituents, rather than narrow special interests who happen to have the ability to fill their campaign coffers. In the last 2 years, the Supreme Court has blown a huge hole in our ability to regulate campaign finance. But the FEC's lax enforcement and narrow interpretations of existing law have only served to exacerbate the problem. This is particularly clear in the examples given before me of the FEC's failure to act in keeping candidates and super PACs from coordinating and allowing for the creation of more and more loopholes in disclosure laws. Furthermore, to me this just creates a double standard, whereby the very people who are charged by the American people with regulating and creating rules of the road for all Americans can prevent themselves from being regulated just by inaction. This allows them to preserve the electoral status quo just by doing nothing. And overall, I think the gridlock of the FEC is really a microcosm of the partisan gridlock that's turning Americans off from believing in the power of good government to have the ability and the willpower to solve our most basic problems. It's the basic responsibility of Congress and the President to begin to restore the faith in the American government. And the best way is to start here and fix the agency that makes it accountable. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions. Any of our colleagues can answer. Let me just make one additional point. The loophole that Paul was describing, which basically emasculated the contribution disclosure laws, is the subject of a lawsuit brought by Representative Chris Van Hollen. Democracy 21 and the Campaign Legal Center are representing him to overturn that loophole, to close the loophole and restore disclosure. That case has been fully briefed and oral argument is scheduled for it in January in the federal district court. But this is what it comes down to. I mean, we are forced to sue to get proper enforcement of the campaign finance laws. Let's open it up for questions for anyone.
I know some of the government actors have been meeting or meet regularly with the Obama staff. What have they told you?
Well, we don't meet regularly. We're not on the regular meeting list. But we have had meetings over the time. I mean, they don't have an answer. I mean, in 2009 and 2010, the Obama administration could have nominated FEC commissioners, and if they were blocked by Senator McConnell, they could have made recess appointments. That's what's been done in the past with FEC commissioners and with other appointments. And they just absolutely refused to do it. They failed to do it. They don't really have an answer. I mean, we could speculate on their answer.
But, sorry, you finish.
But the bottom line is it has not been important enough for them to challenge the Senate process and send up the names to put this on the Senate. And you can understand it when you see how well the administration is doing with the Senate.
But it does seem to be that the White House is being pushed into a corner to finally make some decision. You know, take a look at this chart. I mean, 5 of the 6 commissioners, their terms have expired at this point. And the commissioners that are serving are gutting the most basic elements of our campaign finance law disclosure. It's become increasingly evident that if we're to get any kind of system of enforcement of the campaign finance law and any reasonable level of disclosures going on in 2012 and beyond, President Obama's got to step up to the plate. And I hope he's starting to hear this message.
Let me just repeat what I said earlier. This national scandal now rests on President Obama's shoulders. And if he continues to refuse to send nominations to the Senate to be fought out in the Senate, this is President Obama's national scandal. It's his responsibility.
Well, and you would think the president would be more sensitive to this issue. I don't know whether you all are following the Keystone Pipeline issue, but the administration has before it a very important decision about whether to approve an environmentally destructive pipeline. And the lobbyist for Keystone has recently been hired by the Obama campaign. Now, according to their rules about lobbyists, they wouldn't hire that person for the administration, but apparently it's all right that the person goes over to the Obama campaign. And you've also been seeing the Solyndra issue. I would think that the White House would be a little more sensitive to issues about ethics and campaign financing at this point.
Is it fair to say, Fred, that your groups have been generally supportive of the administration on a lot of the reform issues, and you think that you haven't been tough enough on them? I mean, it seems like you're now at this point changing the tone a little bit. I mean, I wonder if you had had a tougher tone earlier, if some of this would have happened, or do you think that would have been?
Well, that's hard to say. We have been supportive in the initial steps they've taken. We were very supportive of the executive order and some of the other efforts they've undertaken. We have been very concerned about their failure to attempt to do anything to reform the campaign finance laws. Speaking for myself, we recognize that there are lots of issues on the table, and that the Congress simply seems to be operating, particularly the Republicans, on the grounds that anything that helps the president hurts their goals of winning the 2012 elections. But putting that aside, this is a particular instance where the president has the first step to take. The first step is completely in his control. And we have been raising concerns about this in the past. We wrote to President Obama in March of this year, I believe. And this is solely on his shoulders. Now, in the other areas, it's hard to say. You know, maybe some people would have wanted to be tougher. But be that as it may, this is where we are now. This is one thing the president can do to try to help restore the integrity of the campaign finance laws. And he's refused to do it for 3 years.
Ken, where most of us have been very supportive of the administration has been his fantastic and first ever work when it comes to governmental ethics reforms. His focus on lobbyists and recusal of people who have conflicts of interest being appointed to the administration. No one's ever done that before. And, this has been a fantastic effort by the Obama administration. 3 years into the administration, there still isn't a presidential appointee who's come under investigation for scandal. Compare that to the previous Bush or the Clinton administrations. So the ethics policies have been something that most of us have been very supportive. This is campaign finance. And in the campaign finance arena, the Obama administration has not yet led the way on this. And we are desperately trying to push them into doing so.
Do others want to comment on that question before we go on? Okay, other questions?
The president can't really appoint a replacement for Mitch McConnell. Why should we expect the new FEC commissioners to be any different?
Well, that's a battle that has to be fought out. You just can't sit here and let a national scandal grow and grow and grow. It's not just Senator McConnell, it's his 46 Republican colleagues in the Senate. And if they want to prevent this national scandal from being solved or help to be solved, they should be forced to take that action. The American people should know that the Senate and Senator McConnell will not let this national scandal be solved. But we can't get there. No one can get there until this process starts. And that's President Obama's job.
We've allowed an informal process, or the administration has allowed an informal process to develop. It's supposed to be nomination by the president, confirmation by the Senate. But the actual process when it comes to the FEC has now traditionally become Harry Reid appoints the Democrats and Mitch McConnell appoints the Republicans. We're asking President Obama to fix that and go back to the constitutional process of how these commissioners are supposed to be selected.
Other questions? Yes?
So I guess you've written a letter to President Obama today, but what's next? Like, what's the strategy? You just try to raise awareness about this, try to make sure that change does happen.
You're sitting at what's next. And we'll keep trying to do whatever we can.
Is there ads or?
That hasn't been discussed. Does anyone have any money they want to contribute? Okay, thanks, folks. Thanks very much.
Hearings in 1310 Longworth.
Yeah.